Hi, everyone. How's it going? My name's Erin McKinley. I'm with Bay Area News Group, and I am here to kind of introduce and help kick off our Bay Area real estate and COVID-19 conversation. We just wanted to go over a few housekeeping notes before we get started. We're going to go ahead and allow some more headliners to join this call for our private Q&A. I did want to make a note that this is a private Q&A, and it is special for our headliners group. So thank you for joining, and please note that you do have some perks that come along with all of our Newsroom at Home webinars. One is joining this at 9:30. The other is to submit questions beforehand. So when you get an email from us marketing this, please go ahead and click, that you'd like to participate and join. And then when you get to that next page, there's an option for you to submit questions. So if there are questions that you would like to ask beforehand and to get kind of more of that intimate conversation, this is the place to have it. So we really hope that you guys take advantage of those perks. And like I said, we're going to get started here in a minute. Just some housekeeping notes. If you have questions live, so right now you didn't get a chance to submit your question beforehand, please go ahead and use that Q&A button right on your Zoom toolbar. If you have anything else that you'd like to comment on, go ahead and use that chat feature. We'd love to hear from you. Like I said, we're going to go ahead and give probably about one more minute or so until we get some more headliners to join, and then we will go ahead and get started. Okay, gang, for those of you who have just joined, thank you again for coming. This is the headliners portion of our Bay Area News Group, Newsroom at Home, Bay Area Real Estate with COVID-19 conversation. Wanted to also let you guys know we have our next event lined up. It is on July 16th, and it is going to be about summer TV. And what can we expect? What do we see on the horizon? What was a big hit? What was not a hit? And kind of how the future is going to look, including the succeeding or failing of, how TV does their part on Black Lives Matter, as well as how sports broadcasters are managing during this time when there's no sports. So it'll be a really interesting conversation. We hope we see you there. Again, it's going to be on Thursday, July 16th at 10 a.m. You should be looking out for some communication on how to register. But if you do have any questions before then, please go to bayareanewsgroup.com/headliners. That is your spot to get information on these types of events, how to register, how to listen to the past recordings, and anything that you guys might need. So I'm finally here to now introduce to you our Bay Area News Group housing reporter, Lou Hansen. He's going to take it away for this conversation. Lou, it's all yours.
Hi, thanks, Erin. Great. I'm Lou Hansen. I am a real estate reporter and housing reporter for the Bay Area News Group. I've been doing it for about 3 years now. We cover the highs and lows of the Bay Area market, which is the hottest in the country and among the hottest in the world. I'm sure you know, as longtime subscribers. We look for a lot of different angles to the housing shortage and buying and selling real estate. I'm joined by my editor and assistant managing editor, Rebecca Stallner, who also knows an awful lot about the Bay Area market. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the stories that we've been covering and some of the important themes that we see in our coverage over the past few years. Rebecca?
Thanks, Lou. And thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it. As Lou mentioned, I'm an assistant managing editor of housing and living. I grew up here in the Bay Area and in San Francisco in the East Bay, went to college in San Francisco where I got the journalism bug, and so here I am. As Lou mentioned, this is something we focus on. We focus a lot on housing. It's a big story for us and certainly a priority in our coverage. And that's, it's a big interest to a lot of our readers. whether you already have a house, whether you want a house, whether you have wanted a house and are trying to buy, or whether you're selling, or whether you're renting. It's kind of a huge story here in the Bay Area because we do have a housing shortage. You know, certainly compared to our job growth, it's a big investment for people. It's become a very big focus for state and local government as they have tried to grapple with, well, how can we get more housing and the right mix of housing? It's also a topic that affects everyone. It affects longtime residents, it affects newcomers, it affects obviously owners and buyers and renters, it affects businesses that hire people, our commute times, you name it. And generally speaking, housing and real estate is somewhere in that story. So it's a bit about our priorities and why we do it.
Every part of our lives.
It does.
And we'll talk about over the next hour and a half or so about some of the impacts that COVID has had on the market and some of the challenges that real estate agents are seeing, and some of the issues that have scared some sellers out of the market. But the buyers still seem to be raring to go. There's a lot of other issues that come up as well. I've written a few stories recently about land use and properties in particularly a development in Palo Alto. And I think we try to look for in our housing coverage stories that tell a little bit more about the Bay Area as a large place. There are small stories that tell a bigger story about how challenging it is, for example, to develop. A recent story that I read was about a Palo Alto neighborhood that was originally earmarked for 60 low-income affordable units for seniors. That was approved by City Council in 2013 and overturned by a referendum. Just in recent months, that referendum's final verdict has come in. Instead of affordable homes in the area, you have 16 multi-million-dollar mansions coming. And that really kind of is indicative of how difficult it is to find affordable housing in this region. There's a lot of resistance from neighborhoods. There's a lot of resistance from city councils to build it. And on top of that, it's very expensive to build affordable housing here. So those are some of the pressures that we like to get into. Rebecca, what are some of the stories that stick with you in our coverage? Because we've been focusing on this for, gosh, a good 3 years now.
We have, and we've certainly written a lot about some of the struggles that people have, and we've written a lot about some of the tensions. If you already are in a neighborhood and you live there and you love your neighborhood and you want to see it thrive, it's understandable that people are sometimes wondering, well, wait a minute, why is that large complex planned in my neighborhood, or why is this happening in my neighborhood, or why is that happening? So I think we really do try to write for a very broad audience of people and try to encompass all of that. We've certainly done some longer term projects where we've looked at why the Bay Area has become the way that it has. If you've owned for a long time, it's great. It's been a great investment. Real estate has outperformed the stock market, as Lou has reported. And certainly that's a bonus, for many, many people. Their home, if they're lucky enough to own one here, is a big part of their retirement plan, or certainly something that they hope to share with their children in later years. So we've written about all of those issues. We've written about families doubling up to afford places. We've written about folks who have really good jobs who are struggling. I certainly remember one story in which we wrote about a couple in San Leandro and they had kids, and they lived in a very small place, and every night they slept on the floor. Their kids had the bedrooms, and to them it was just, well, this is what we need to do to stay here, and this is where a family is. And so I think it's those very human struggles, and the stories that people have to tell about their homes, which are becoming, obviously at this point in time, so much more increasingly important to all of us as we often are in them a little bit more. So I
Yeah.
think,
Rebecca, you helped shepherd, yeah,
go ahead, Lou.
you shepherded the Price We Pay series that we've done 2 parts on so far. Tell us a little bit about that. What was the focus, and what were we trying to show readers? We did some pretty nifty data work there. I got some pretty surprising results about how affordable and unaffordable the Bay Area really is.
We did. We analyzed every single zip code in the 9-county Bay Area, and looked at it over time to sort of show the changes that had been occurring as prices ticked up, both in housing and homes for sale, and townhomes and condos, and also in rents. And so we looked at that and discovered that there was no place in the Bay Area for folks, if it was a family in which 2 people were making minimum wage, there was no place that had a median affordable rent. Not a single zip code, not one. And buying was in some ways a little more affordable if you could get the down payment together. So we wanted to show over time those changes, and we did have some graphics and things that showed those changes, but it was really about how the Bay Area has changed, where you have communities that are becoming very, very attractive because of their schools. Dublin is a great example, where it's really growing and the pressure is pretty huge, and the schools are feeling that because so many people are moving there. We did a part 2, which was about how poor neighborhoods have really been the hardest hit in this run-up. As people who are priced out of more expensive neighborhoods are looking to move in, and the changes that that's creating for people who had been able maybe to hang on in very poor neighborhoods, who are now finding themselves getting pushed out further and further. So our goal was really to sort of show the changes that have been occurring over time as a result of that steady increase in housing prices, which has been really quite remarkable.
Yeah. One of the numbers that came up in my reporting this week that really struck with me was that 2/3 of the low-income residents in the Bay Area spent more than 1/3 of their incomes on housing. That's among the highest in the country. And it really kind of speaks to the struggle that you see here for renters, for the working poor. You really have a market where it takes more than 2 adult incomes to pay rent, to if you're even fortunate enough to have a down payment to get a mortgage. So what you're seeing is, and another theme that we come up with a lot in our stories, is those super commuters, is the dispersal of the Bay Area, people moving out to outer suburbs in the Central Valley and then commuting back in. You know, it's really difficult for a construction worker or a nurse or teachers to get a foothold in the Bay Area market right now, especially if you're newcomers. I mean, it helps if you are established and you have family here and maybe some help. That's a common way for people in the Bay Area to buy a home, get a family loan. But there's a lot of pressures to keep up the that keep the pressures up. We have a lot of high-paying jobs here. We have a lot of people who are well compensated, and frankly, they can afford a $1.5 million home in Cupertino. So
I do think there's a lot of I think there are a lot of people who are well compensated, though, who are also certainly spending more than a 30% of their income to get into a house, because the median price of a home here is what now, Lou? 800?
About 980,000 in Santa Clara County in the Bay Area, according
Right.
to the April numbers of the California Association of Realtors. So yes, the struggle is real. If you're a techie, you are still worrying about your budget, and you are still making multiple bids on properties and losing a lot. And it was like that from April 2012, which coincidentally was the month, I believe, that the Facebook IPO came out. The market took off that month and ran up through 2018. And in recent 2019 was a little bit cooler, but it really started to pick back up in January, and agents were expecting a pretty banner year until the coronavirus struck. So there's still at every level, I think there's a lot of stress in the market, and it's an angst-filled time if you're a buyer. It's a good time if you are if you're a seller. If you are an owner, you're seeing a lot of appreciation in your assets.
Lou, can you, I know one of our headliners had a question about how rents are being affected by COVID-19 and sort of the actions of cities. Can you talk a little bit about what you've been seeing? I know it's, up and down, and it's takes a little while for that to show up, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. What we're seeing, the most interesting thing I think we're seeing in rents, Rebecca, is that the apartments around the tech hubs are seeing people break their leases, techies in particular, and move farther away. In the early weeks of the pandemic, and as it stretched into months, the big tech companies were saying work from home is going to be something that's a part of our culture in the future. And that message got to employees immediately. So you saw a 10% drop in month-over-month rents in San Francisco, and you saw huge drops in Menlo Park, where Facebook is headquartered, and Mountain View, where Google and Alphabet are headquartered. So it's been a really dramatic drop in those sections. What's happened is prices have gone up in East Bay cities, where people can find more space and at a cheaper price. If you don't have to make a commute but once or twice a week, that's a pretty good deal for a lot of people. So we're definitely seeing some early impacts of COVID on the rental market, particularly in the core Silicon Valley.
Right. And I know many cities have, instituted sort of freezes, or counties as well as the state, on, any form of eviction. And there's some concern that when those expire, that will create sort of a pent up situation.